everyone, greetings from AOD. I'm Mehek Arora, your host of the event, and on the behalf of the TEDxAUD team, I would like to extend a very warm welcome. As Dr. B.R. Ambedkar once said, as plants need watering, ideas need propagation. We at Ambedkar University strongly believe that no idea is socially productive unless it spreads across the society. Therefore, adjusting to the new normal, we forbid the pandemic as an obstacle and seize it as an opportunity for the dissemination of words of wisdom. Remember, we're not living in fear, we're living in faith for better tomorrow. Hence, TEDx AUD has been themed on hope, well being, and career choices. Before we start, I would like to invite our Honorable Registrar, Dr. Nitin Malik, an eminent anthropologist and a notable academic administrator, to say a few words.
Hope is you want to have in future, what you want the good to happen in future, and wellness is the physical health, not only related to the physical health, but it is the physical, mental and social well-being. And these two words, hope and wellness, they go directly together. Rather, I would say they are directly proportional. If you are in good wellness with good physical, mental as well as social health, the hope rises a high and you are more to achieve the hope. In this unprecedented time when COVID-19 pandemic is there, there is no one left who is not suffering, maybe in the family or in the friends or the circle around. But yes, we have a ray of hope, a ray of positive hope to go and achieve our careers, and that is how TEDx is going to be there. So let us march ahead, let us connect, interconnect, and join the dots, move ahead, and sky is the limit. Let's achieve the majority and the motivational features of positive hope towards attaining the careers.
With this, we would like to present our four enlightening talks by four phenomenal speakers. So, without any further ado, I would like to invite our first esteemed speaker. He has spent over 20 years in academics and research in premium institutions performing various roles. He has also been an incubator with consulting experience that runs across diverse services. With his specialization in CRM and customer experience, he has also served on the board of governors. Please welcome Professor Amit Mukherjee.
Good evening and welcome. Today I'd like to speak about something that the pandemic has brought into very sharp focus, and that is the impact of the pandemic on financial well-being of individuals. We have seen that across all sections in society, there have been some kind of socio-economic issues that the individuals have faced in terms of pay cuts, job losses, loss of business, loss of livelihoods, and that in some sections of society, and this is across the whole world, we have seen the impact of this loss of financial well-being on the physiological and health and overall well-being of the individual as well. But what the pandemic has also brought to the front is something which was not really in the forefront of our focus so far. And I am speaking about media reports which suggest that at all levels and sections of society there is great anxiety, there is great stress. And this distress is not just about jobs and financial well-being, but is also about conditions imposed by the lockdown. People who are unable to meet their family, meet their friends, interact socially, meet colleagues. And this social interaction has come up as a cause for emotional well-being issues, of distress, indeed of depression in some cases. And the recognition that social interactions is a very critical aspect of social well-being and the overall well-being of individuals is something that the pandemic has brought to the fore. And if we link it to reports, But older folks live longer, live happier, have lesser or later heart and dementia onset issues if they have been socially engaged, is a pointer for all of us. We need to keep in mind that as we live our lives, we are able to be socially engaged in a meaningful manner. And what gives meaning to our social engagements is the quality and the number of meaningful relationships that we have. And it is not just the interpersonal interactions itself, but it is also how fulfilling these interactions are. And if we go back to McClelland, to Maslow and their theories of motivation, these social needs, the needs for affiliation, are a very important need that human beings have fulfilled. Indeed, the very basis of civilization has been the social exchange. And if we look at this aspect, I'd like to link it to livelihoods and to career choices. We have seen how normally individuals would choose careers by looking at the financial well-being and the socio-economic impact in terms of social status and other social aspects brought around by the income as the basis for career choices. But we've also seen during the pandemic that there could be emotional impact of the working conditions and of being locked up or cooped up. And those corporates which keep you locked up for hours and hours every day, leaving very little time for family interaction, for interaction with friends, for social interactions, may be emotionally damaging, may be toxic. And this emotional and social well-being is also something that you should look for in your career choices. And this is what I would like to elaborate upon as we go ahead in our discussion today. If you look at those who have been engaged in something which is socially fulfilling, the example of healthcare workers and frontline workers who have tirelessly provided the life-saving services to a large section of those who were suffering in our society. What motivates them to stick to their career, to serve beyond the call of duty, and definitely beyond the call of financial rewards? What is it that motivates them? What is it that makes them tick? And perhaps it is not a matter of financial rewards as much as their orientation, their decision that they would sacrifice, they would stay away from families, they would hardly have time for themselves, they would risk contracting such a serious and life-threatening disease, but they would keep on serving humanity. And perhaps this choice, taken initially on the basis of several factors such as competence, such as interest, such as abilities, such as financial rewards, has become their meaning in life today because of a very, very different context, their contribution to society. And that is really fulfilling. If we try to understand what really is fulfilling and rewarding, we need to make a distinction between what White and Dolan call happiness and being rewarded. And they make a distinction between somebody spending time with their family, engaged in some family pursuit, which has been seen in their study as being very rewarding by individuals, versus those same individuals reporting that it is when they relax on a beach on a vacation or watch their favorite TV program, with something nice to eat alongside and totally relaxed, that they are having a happy time. And that rewards may not be connected with your day-to-day happiness. It may be a longer term thing. So what is it that we look for when we make a career choice? Well-being has many facets, and if we look for financial and social well-being, perhaps we are limiting what we gain out of our careers, because if we really look at it, careers will probably be the largest set of activities that we perform in life over the years and on a day-to-day basis. How do we find out what would be rewarding career choices? And these are the pointers that I'd like to put forward for your consideration. Let me start by asking you, how satisfied are you with life as a whole these days? And I would expect you to answer on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not at all satisfied and 10 is completely satisfied. Now, this is a question which the European Social Survey, the OECD Survey Guidelines, the German Socioeconomic Survey, the UK National Socioeconomic Survey, they've all sort of been asking. And it is about evaluative well-being, where Kahneman and Deaton actually found that rather than reports of income and wealth and assets, it is a far more evaluative and subjective assessment of the individual's well-being that is important for the overall welfare of society and of individuals. And this question is about being satisfied with your life as a whole these days. And this is something we call evaluative well-being. This is for the longer term. This is about being rewarded in your careers. But are you happy in your careers? And that's a question where, I could ask a similar question saying, how happy, not satisfied, but how happy are you with life today? Just after you have given your quant examination, final one, and after a tough paper. And I could replace the word happy by saying, how anxious are you about the results of today's examination? And I would be assessing something which is short term in terms of your experience. And this is called experienced well-being, hedonic well-being, and even emotional well-being. And Kahneman and Deaton again talk about the frequency and intensity of positive and negative emotions that you experience on a day-to-day basis. And this emotional well-being is very, very important for the entire life of the individual. Davidson, Cohen in 2004 and 2003 respectively, speak about the neurobiological functions of our emotional state, of our emotional well-being, especially the positive affect. They talk about our response to illness, but it could easily extend, as later research shows, to stress experienced in careers. And let me talk about emotional well-being in your careers. You must have heard of toxic organizations and toxic cultures in organizations and toxic people in organizations, where executives would leave not the company but their boss. And you would find that in some occupations, in some sectors of the economy, there is usually higher stress levels than in others. You would find that in some functional domains such as sales, such as consulting, there would be a higher level of stress, of targets, of pressures than in some other functional areas. And you must actually understand these aspects and how you cope as an individual with these aspects before you step into an industry, a functional area, or a company. Another aspect which really impacts your emotional well-being is the feeling of self-worth that you have on a day-to-day basis, which comes from your competence for doing the job. Are you ready for a consulting job? Will you be able to hold it down for the next 3 years? Will you be able to learn enough in these 3 years to move on, to have growth, to have fulfillment, having learned enough in the first 3 years to meet the challenges of the next 3 years. So, one aspect of career choices is to look at your competence and fit with your aspirations and dream jobs, with your hopes, and a realistic assessment of where you stand today is very important for planning your career choice today. And this planning for growth and fulfillment is also very important. And a lot of people have been very emotionally positive, have high emotional well-being, have high overall well-being, because they were able to successfully plan how to create a portfolio of skills by taking up careers, taking up jobs, taking up certain job profiles step by step as they progress to the top. So it means, let's say, getting into sales first and then moving on to some sales support functions, moving on parallelly to, let's say, marketing support, and then moving on to marketing planning and so on. So that kind of planning, which allows you to develop the competencies required, is very critical. Conflict is also very important. And you must understand that there are certain industries and certain companies where there would be emotional conflict due to the value systems of the company and the value systems that you have as an individual. And I have seen cases where very bright executives, very happy young people, very positive people have burnt out within a matter of 2 to 3 years because what they were doing did not match their value systems. And be careful. How do you find out about toxic cultures, about value systems and so on? Well, you need to look at social media reports about companies, about sectors, about domains. You need to interact with your alumni and ask them these questions. And you also need to explore yourself and see where you stand on these matters. And being happy or feeling rewarded or fulfilled is more a matter of these elements than purely the financial returns. What else is there in well-being? If you look at Seligman's positive psychology, if you look at PERMA theories, the theory of biopsychosocial well-being, the concept of eudaimonic well-being, the concept that there is happiness and fulfillment both in the long run if you experience some purpose in your life. Further, if you are able to overcome certain challenges and you are able to grow. And this is called flourishing. The Office of National Statistics UK defines, among 10 other dimensions of well-being, the concept of personal well-being. To what extent do you feel that the things you do in life, and I may add, your work, are worthwhile? Worthwhile in terms of financial, social, emotional, everything. But on a far greater basis, the fact that you are actually left with a perception that what you do is very relevant to you. And for people who are oriented more socially, it means whether they have contributed to society. And perhaps this explains why frontline workers and health workers have really carried on in their jobs tirelessly beyond human imagination. That they felt what they were doing was worth it, and it came from their social contribution. So this personal well-being and the sense that what you do in life has to be worth it is something which you should find out by asking yourself hard questions of whether you really think finance is your forte, that's what you really love doing. Try to go through each of those courses that you read in your first year in the MBA, for instance, and imagine that if you're reading OB and HR, how would you enjoy it on a day-to-day basis? How would you enjoy being engaged in it for the next 40 years in your life? Ask yourself that question and only then choose your domain. Ask yourself whether you would like to join the FMCG industry, the service industry, the healthcare industry. Ask yourself whether you want to work in an MNC or an Indian company. And touch your heart when you do that and say, will I really feel that I am happy, maybe proud, maybe conscious of self worth if I work in that kind of environment? There may be many other aspects which come with a career choice. And I get to the example of the healthcare workers again. Many will feel that a life where they are able to engage in meaningful social relationships, they have time for that, would be a far more fulfilling career, and that has been the general conclusion of various reports, right from Maslow to White and Dolan and the others. How do you choose a career like this? Well, careers and corporations which provide you a better work-life balance are something which have been a trend for career choices for the last 10 years, and it is something which will only increase in the future. And you do well for yourself if you did look at work-life balance and the time you have for social engagements and make your choices accordingly. Does the firm provide you gymnasiums? Does it give you time off for your health? Is there a mandatory holiday that you must take, or vacation that you must take? Do they take care of your health as a policy? Well, these are things you should ask, and you'll probably find that this is connected right down to, toxic cultures versus very responsive, supportive, and positive cultures. And this is also an indicator for your personal well-being. You'll enjoy being in a social situation in that company. But to get back to that aspect of social contributions for a last time, if you really do not find corporations which support, even if as a part of their CSR, societal development or community development projects, and support time that their workers will spend on such projects formally, and there are such companies now, and they realize that it is more productive for their employees and for themselves, make your career choices, if not for such companies, then at least for such enterprises which are focused on social contributions. And that's another trend. Becoming a social entrepreneur, creating your own enterprise is very, very fulfilling. Even if you have an enterprise which is financially not so large, the sense of fulfillment that most entrepreneurs have in a going concern is rather immense in terms of personal well-being. Being masters of your own situation is perhaps emotionally a major aspect of well-being. And therefore, as a career choice, you should seriously also look at, in this day and age, careers in social entrepreneurship, because ultimately all corporations are only serving a social need. Whether they have that agenda or not, it has been seen that those who have a mission to serve society far outlive other corporations which only look at profit as a motive. So let me end by saying that if you do make a career choice, please keep in mind not just financial or economic well-being, but also your social, your emotional, and your personal well-being. And I wish you the best of career choices and the best of careers. Thank you.
With those words of wisdom, let us all make our career choices, keeping in mind not just financial or economic well being, but also social, emotional, and personal well being. Moving on, our next speaker is an incredible executive coach and a diversity and inclusion consultant. She's on a wonderful journey to make an impact by enabling organizations to become more inclusive and people to shift mindset to become more successful. Please welcome Ms. Shruti Swaroop.
Hello, everybody. One of the most enduring memories I have through my school days is getting my report card. My report card that year on year spoke similar things. Very well done, can do better. Excellent, can do better. This can do better has stayed with me for most part of my life. It defined how I looked at myself and how I thought the world looked at me. After all, the beliefs and perspectives we get in our growing up years define us. Approximately 72% young professionals I coach are spending over 100 hours a week at work, managing expectations of others, and more importantly, managing expectations they have of themselves. They're showing signs of burnout. I can understand them. About 2 decades back, when I started my career, I remember wanting big designations, quick money, and trying to be successful. Whatever was my definition of success back then. I was putting in long hours at work, doing late nights, trying to match pace with all the geographies my work took me to. It was great, feedback was good, except that I was burnt out. That was my first lesson in mental well-being. That was the first time I realized that being mentally fit to do our role plays a big part to do our work well. My coach back then sat down with me and made me do my SWOT, becoming aware of my strengths, my weaknesses, my areas of opportunity, the value I was bringing to the table, the impact I was making, helped me a lot. It created a different kind of self-awareness. Another thing that helped me was taking a balcony view of the situation I was in, which meant looking at things objectively, without emotions. Was it easy? No, it was not. But I had to, because I was getting pulled in by the emotions of the work I was doing. Even today, very often, I take a step back. It makes me look at things objectively, and it makes life easy. Corporate careers are about 40 years, from the time we graduate to the time we retire. It is often said, careers are like marathon. Sometimes I think it's possibly not even a marathon. It's a very different cross country which requires a different kind of endurance. Because at different times in our career, we need different skills. We need different expertise to deal with what our career throws our way. I have learned to manage my energy differently at different times. I have learned that different parts of our career require us to manage our energy in different ways. Sometimes it's okay to rest, sometimes it's okay to run. We need to know how to pace ourselves. A senior executive I worked with was discussing his challenges with me last week. One of the things he mentioned was that he's expected to have all answers. I was impressed with his vulnerability. I was impressed with his courage. It takes a lot of courage, wisdom, and humility to actually go out there and talk to somebody and accept that you're vulnerable, accept that you do not have all answers. Having all answers is also a story we tell ourselves, that as leaders, people need to have all answers, that we need to have all answers. This courage to accept that we do not have answers makes us go out there, seek help, ask people, and leverage different perspectives. Getting different perspectives often helps us look at things with a very different mindset. It has worked for me quite often to just be vulnerable and reach out and seek help. A lot of women professionals I coach also speak about the glass ceiling. They talk about the challenges they face in their careers. Glass ceiling is a lot about the opportunities we are denied, but it is also a lot about the opportunities we deny ourselves. As I said a little while back, the stories we tell ourselves make a lot of difference. Recognizing that a lot of times the boundaries around us are self-created is a huge step in our career and in defining where we are going. Again, it has been an awareness for me that a lot of times what I am thinking or what I think the world is thinking about me is possibly nothing. It's about what I think about myself that defines me. Sometimes we feel very stuck in our careers. We feel that we've hit a cul-de-sac. There are no choices, no options. We are going through the same thing for a very long time. It's important in those moments to know that it's time to manage energy differently, to reskill ourselves. I have seen a lot of senior professionals having the courage to reskill themselves at various stages of their lives. I have seen a lot of senior professionals actually moving from their careers and following their hobby and their passions at various times. Knowing when to reskill, when to take a step back and relook at your entire journey of the career is important. The last 1 year has taught us all a very different skill: flexibility. The pandemic has showed a very different side of life to us, which is that as many goals as we make, as much vision that we can have about life and our career, we can still have uncertainty like the one that we've been going through in the last 1 year. The pandemic has taught us that everything can fall in disarray at times. When we think about our careers of 40 years, when we think about modularizing them and making short-term goals, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, everything at times can come to a knot. It's about adaptability in these situations. It's about knowing that these are times to manage energy, to take rest, to take a step back and let things happen. Go with the flow. Careers are about being creative, being innovative, and being entrepreneurial. It's about taking risk. It's about knowing when to take that risk. It has helped me in good stead to look back and see at various times how I have reinvented myself. The challenges that are thrown our way require us to actually rethink and reinvent. And I know that it is not easy, but one has to do it in the grand scheme of these 40 years. As I said, it needs a very different endurance. What has given me a lot of support is knowing that each time when faced with roadblocks and challenges, I have managed to look at my overall mental well-being. I have managed to look at the bigger scheme of my career and then work towards it. I have managed to rise like a phoenix, and that's what matters. Ultimately, people do not remember events. People only remember the emotions associated with it. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
I personally resonate with that thought that these times are indeed about adaptability in situations, about knowing how to manage energies, rest, and take a step back and let things happen. Our next speaker has a deep passion for helping people, finding meaning in their work, and an immense understanding of the corporate. He offers a palette of professional experience. This recently turned entrepreneur is now working in the space of organizational culture, structures, leadership, and talent development. Apart from this, he holds a keen interest in interacting with students as well. Please welcome Mr. Ajit Swaminathan.
Hi. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude to the faculty and students of Ambedkar University, Delhi for giving me this platform to share with you my thoughts on career choices. We often use the words job and career interchangeably. A job is a set of activities that one does typically with an organization for which she or he gets compensated. A career, on the other hand, is a more long term word or a more overarching word, for it can encompass not just one job but a series of jobs and experiences that one gathers over the long period of life. So, this conversation is on career choices and not on job choices. To make this distinction more clear, being a teacher at a DU or an AUD or an IIT is a job. But teaching in itself is a career or a calling, right? Now, I remember sitting in the space that most of you, at least the students here, are sitting in 15-20 years back. Either at the cusp of your career or at the cusp of making the decision on what to do next. I have been a firm believer that what one tends to do as a kid is also what one tends to do well as an adult. The patterns remain, the manifestations may change. And therefore, during the course of this conversation, I am going to be sharing with you some experiences from childhood to teens to the space that you are in right now to the last 15-16 years of my career in HR. So I hope these experiences resonate with some of your current scenarios and also help you in making happier decisions. So I don't recollect when I heard the term career first. I do recollect though when I had the first notion of a career. My aunt used to call me Rakesh Sharma after India's first cosmonaut. I remember visualizing myself in that uniform that astronauts or cosmonauts wear inside a space shuttle. That perhaps was my first notion, or the one that I remember, of what I wanted to be. And like with every other child, I too had ambitions that varied through time. Some days I would want to be an archaeologist, some days a librarian, some days a pilot, and the list would be endless. I was growing up in northern Kerala, in the part that is known as Malabar, and we would undertake a lot of train journeys. I would always be fascinated to see the uniform of the train ticket collector. A kid growing up in the late 80s in Kerala, I'm sure most of us, we'd never seen a man actually wearing something as smart as a coat. To me, that was very, very enchanting. On top of that, I thought the train ticket collector has the freedom to decide when he wants to travel and where he wants to travel to. I thought this is going to be a brilliant thing to do when I grew up. And even as I was staying on with this dream, I remember traveling in a video coach. A video coach essentially is a bus service where they screen movies. And it had, while one of those movies was being screened, I remember seeing one of my favorite actors on screen. He was playing the role of a music director. I don't remember much of the story, but what I do remember is when he would enter the recording studio in the movie, he would end up doing like this, moving his hands in a rhythmic fashion as the music played on. I thought this was fantastic. I could listen to music and all I had to do was this. It took me a long time to realize that the job of music direction was much more than just a rhythmic moving of hands. Perhaps the first lesson that I would have taken in hindsight of not limiting myself to being infatuated, but to delve deeper. All of us enjoy this feeling of being infatuated, be it with a person or an idea, or in this case, the career. But please remember that most of the time when we are up is spent with either the ones that we love at home or with our career. So, loving our career becomes very important to our well being. I move on. By the time I was 13 or 14, I remember I was very clear in my head that I wanted to be a cricketer. I was absolutely fanatical about the game. I remember going in for selection to the under 13 or 14 team. Some 120, 130 of us were there for selection. At the end of the trials, optimistically, I think I would have ranked 129 there. Optimistically. Perhaps my first notion of a disappointment came in there. Again, with the benefit of hindsight, the lesson I took out of that experience was that while it is important to love what you do, it is equally important for you to take a hard look at yourself and see whether you have the talent to do what you really love to do. In my case, it was playing the game, and maybe I was not as good at playing the game as much as I loved the game. हमारे यहाँ एक कहावत है ना, कुत्ते पालो बिल्ली पालो, गलत फहमी मत पालो. Again, with hindsight, I know I was consumed with the blind spot of not knowing where my talents lie, or did not in this case. The first serious decision that most of us in India have to make as we grow up is to take the decision on what stream to choose as one moves from class 10th to class 11th. I took the easy way out. I just did what my friends did. They all took science. I followed suit. Knowing fully well that I absolutely suck at physics and chemistry and I had no interest in these subjects. Needless to say, the academic part of those 2 years was very, very difficult. I did not learn my lesson there. I repeated the same mistake for my undergraduation as well. I moved along with the herd, people who were really good at programming and coding and had the aptitude for that, and I ended up taking up IT for my undergraduation, knowing fully well, again, that I just did not have it in me. I did that because that was the easiest thing to do what the herd did. I'm not using herd in a bad sense. I'm just saying that was a popular thing to do. Right? It's like this. If you were to buy a Sony television, you don't have to justify to the world why you did what you did. But if you were to buy a local brand, people may ask you, ye kya kiya? Ye kyun kiya? And you would end up doing a lot of justification. So I did that. I ended up going with the herd. Many years later, I actually read a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. It's a book about a seagull called Jonathan, who, unlike his clan, believes that the purpose of flight is not to just go from one shore to another in search of food, but perhaps there is a greater reason. He didn't know what that reason was, but he wanted to explore that, and he wanted to also explore his own limitations. One of the sentences or one of the quotes in the book, which I really loved, was when Jonathan says, I do not exist to impress the world. I exist to live my life in a way that I am happy. I will be happy. Had I read this book at that point of time, maybe I would have taken decisions closer to my heart much earlier in life. Be that as it may, by the time I hit the end of third year, I started worrying about what when I don't get placed next year in my campus placements. And more importantly, what do I really need to do in life to earn my livelihood? Thanks to some people in the family and friends, I started reflecting on what are some of the things that I really enjoy doing. From the time when I was a kid, I used to enjoy yapping. I also enjoyed listening. Any process where I would see people talk, I would enjoy that conversation. And more importantly, I loved getting into why somebody was saying or doing what she or he was doing. I thought this drift indicated that I love psychology. And that is how I started doing greater research in terms of what I could do in my psychology for my masters. That research led me to a conclusion at that point of time that perhaps it is best that I do a master's in HR rather than in psychology directly, because after a degree in IT, it was going to be difficult for me to get something in psychology. So this time, I again joined a herd, the Mabhi Aya herd or the MBA herd, Mabhi Aya. The difference though this time was I was very clear that I would only do an MBA with a specialization in HR. Now, during the course of my post-graduation, I did a lot of internship projects, and I'm grateful to those experiences for they solidified my assumption that it was not just an infatuation, but it was love as well. And it is a love I have continued to live with even as I speak to you right now. Perhaps the biggest realization in the last few years has been the importance of keeping oneself abreast of what is happening around and not just limit oneself to what one has done in the past. I'll go back to a childhood story again. In the school that I studied in Kerala, there was a practice. We had classes up to class 10th. When the class 10th admit cards would come, in a ceremony, the principal would hand over the admit card to each individual student, even as some of us would chant something from the ancient Sanskrit verses. At that point of time, I had no clue what those meant. But one of those phrases makes a lot of sense now. It goes, Swadhyayanma Pramadaha, essentially meaning, do not desist from self-study, Swadhyaya. Now, in ancient India, this was their way of giving a message to the student during the convocation as a person moved into her or his career of choice. Swadhyaya has another meaning. It is not just about keeping oneself abreast of what's happening outside. It's also important to know what's happening inside. Self-study, study of self as well. Eventually, you will realize as you go through the years that having a deep observation of your priorities, your needs at any given point of time would also help you with job choices at different points of time. Let me conclude this conversation with a quote again from Jonathan Siegel. And I quote, "You are always free to change your mind and to choose a different future or a different past." Unquote. With these words, I'd like to wish you all happy decision making, wish you all the very best, and I hope that you find your meaning in life in your careers and through your careers. All the best and thank you.
With that concluding quote and a lesson of not existing to impress the world, but to live a life that makes us happy. With these words of wisdom, we would like to move on by inviting our last speaker of the event, a young entrepreneur, an innovator, and a thinker in chief with a strong sense of ownership, leveraging on a strong business acumen and understanding both macros and micros of the task. He's solution oriented and meticulous in his approach. Please welcome Mr. Muhammad Uruj.
Can you see the bookshelf behind me? No? Great. So you can focus on me now. Alright. Have you ever thought about the fundamental questions like why were we born? What is the purpose of our being? Why do we work? Hold on. I don't want you to go into the bottomless pit of your thoughts. I want you to think shallow. So shallow that even deep thinkers frown upon your shallowness today.
tie your thinking horses that are entangled in the chains of emotional reactions, dispositions, habits, and traits that you have formed over time. You must be thinking what great ideas I'm going to share here today. But let me tell you, I don't have any great ideas. I'll try to simplify everyday ideas that we come across. I will definitely share a story with you. Since school, I wanted to start something on my own. But I was clueless about what. As usual after college, I joined a job. I did not like the job, so I switched it. I did not like the second job as well. Then I switched again. And I ended up switching 3 jobs within a span of 9 months. Unfortunately, the third job ended abruptly without paying me for the 3 months of the service. It was a startup. I don't regret joining the organization. I made a conscious choice. In fact, it has shaped me into the businessman I am becoming today. I did not also share the news with my parents for the obvious reasons. I did not want them to get bothered about me. I kept on applying for the jobs. I was also getting the job offers, but with a pay cut. And I was determined I will not take a pay cut. I had this conviction somehow I'll go back to my hometown and I can make that much money easily. I don't want to take a pay cut. So I kept on applying for the jobs and without having any self-doubt, am I even good enough for these jobs? Meanwhile, when all this was unfolding, I had to go for my job every day that everyone was aware of at home. So I made an arrangement with my friend to be at his place while he would be in college. In this way, I got a lot of me time. So I used to apply for the jobs during the day and I used to introspect. I tried to figure out what is wrong with me. What is it I am running away from? Shall I take the job offers that I am getting? Shall I keep on applying for the jobs? Or shall I start something on my own? Shall I wait and take some experience and then start something on my own? I tried to fix things. I kept on thinking for many days and I can say that was the absolute bottom of my life. It went on for good 15 to 16 days. But eventually I figured out what is wrong with me. There were 3 things that I was running away from. First was fear of failure. Second was what if I will not have a regular stream of income. Third, what will I start? So these were my 3 fears. As far as fear of failure was concerned, my inhibitions were, what if I start something and I fail? What will people think about me? A loser? I did not want to be seen as a loser. So I thought about it and I just somehow convinced myself, people don't care. Maybe for some time, like for a few days, they will look down upon me, they will call me loser and eventually they will move on with their lives. So I realized I have to befriend failure if I have to progress in my own life. So I prepared myself to fail. Mind it, I'm preparing myself to fail so that at least I start moving. I am not standing still in one position. I became friends with the failure and then this got sorted. I'll not say this got sorted, but I got some clarity. My mind and heart got calm. Okay, I have now clarity. My second fear was fear of not having a regular income. I thought about it. Why do I need money for? Of course, the answers were easy. I needed money to pay for my groceries and utilities. I had already saved money that could sustain me for a long time. But in such scenarios, negative thoughts creep in. I was like, what if the money runs out before I have another source of income? How will I survive? All those sort of negative thoughts. I sat with myself and tried to think practically. I needed X amount of money to pay for my groceries and utilities. And I calculated I had it for 14 months. Thanks to my small town uber conservative upbringing, I was taught to save. So I used to save 80% of my income and spend only 20% of it. So I got clarity on this front as well. My third fear was, what will I start? When my mind got convinced that I have to start something, it started looking out for the problems it can solve, the value addition I can do to existing things. This went on for several days. Coincidentally, one day when I sat to wear my suede shoes, I realized I don't know how to maintain these shoes. I was using a brush and a piece of wet cloth to clean the shoes, and trust me, it was ruining the finish of my suedes. So I did my research and found that no mainstream companies were focusing on the shoe care part of the footwear. This is how I got to know what I want to do. Today, Shoe Mistries is scaling up in India, and we have started a small operations in UAE market. There's a long way to go for us. Why am I sharing this story with you? Now, when I look back in time and see why nothing made sense and everything seemed puzzled, I realize I was focusing on the moment without putting the puzzle pieces on the larger canvas of life. Now I wish I had looked upon those mundane things differently back when it mattered. When I look at it on a 5-year graph now, it just looks like a small blip in my journey. So I have started questioning myself, why do we live life in days and not in years and decades? I learned this in stock market. So you don't invest in a company based on its 5 or 20 days performance. You evaluate on the basis of 1 to 3 years of performance and time horizon you want to invest it for. Which made me think, isn't our life similar? Why do we judge how much we have progressed in a year's time and not in 5 years or a decade's time? In fact, let's ask most fundamental question, why do we want to progress at all? If I can answer it myself, it is to live a comfortable and healthy life. If I am allowed for a second to assume that is the case for most of us, then why do we slip off from an existing state of well-being to a worse off state to reach out to a better state of well-being? Does it make sense? No, it does not. I then tried to figure out why do we engage in this self-sabotaging behavior. It is because we are conditioned to think that happiness lies in some future place. From a childhood we are told, get your 12th result right and you are set. Complete your education and you will be free. Get a job and you will start flourishing, and this goes on. Whereas the secret to living this elusive happy life is living in the present while keeping the future in the hindsight. If you focus your energy in making your present better instead of some yet to unfold moment in the future, you will feel light and happy. I practice this in my daily life. During this past month, when COVID was going gaga, my mind was very disturbed. Anybody you talk to, anything you see, social media, television, you see only bad news. I sat with myself and tried to figure out what can I do to fix this. I asked questions myself, what can I do to fix this? What can I do to fix that? I have figured out that there are things that are under my control, there are things which are beyond my control. So things that were under my control were washing hands, wearing masks, staying at home. Things that were outside of my control were, will I get an ambulance to ferry me to the hospital? Will I get a hospital bed? Will I get the required medicines? Will I get the oxygen bed if need be? So I realized if I can only influence the things that are under my control, then what is the point of fretting about the things that are beyond my control? In that case, I may end up fretting about it twice. Once, when I am fretting about it in the present moment, and next, when it is going to occur in the future. The worst of all the cases would be when I fret about it in the present and ruin it, and it does not occur in the future. It sounds strange, but think about it and you will conclude. If the occurrence of unfavorable events in the future is uncertain, then what is the point of fretting about it in present and ruining it? Also, the conventional wisdom says if you don't like something, change it. If you cannot, change the way you think about it. This helped me to pause the further deterioration of my mental well-being. You have to understand a lot of stress emanates from how we respond and not from the situation itself. I think I have developed this approach by the content I consume, by the people I meet, by the movie characters that I relate to, the book I might have read recently, somebody I know who might have acted courageously in similar kind of situations. That's why I say keep moving, take actions, don't stand still. Keep swinging your bat in the air. Something somewhere will hit it off. Don't just keep on waiting for the perfect timings. When the opportunity comes, maybe you are not in the flow to grab it and it will hit you like a bouncer and you will not like to miss it. Don't stress too much about making wrong moves or career choices right after the college. Give yourself exposure to multiple industries by interning, volunteering, and even working for free. This is the age when you can engage in high risk behavior. By the way, I don't mean risk of life. What I mean is you don't have responsibilities to take up and liabilities to pay off. Explore your interest area and don't attach money to it. Learn to look at money as numbers. I know that might sound tone deaf in current scenario, but when you focus less on money and focus more on what you want to do, money automatically walks in. You cannot succeed if you start something only for monetary gains. When my father got to know I'm involved in shoe mystery, he said, "Who is going to buy shoe polish worth 400 bucks from you?" Be patient with your actions and impatient with the results. When you finally decide to settle for a role, either in a job or in a business, prefer to choose an industry that is growing or has potential to grow. It will accelerate your growth. Start dissecting your thoughts by journaling them. It will give you more clarity with what you want to do. Things will fall in their place only when your subconscious mind will guide them. Peter Drucker once said, "If you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it." Thank you for your time.
Truly said, when you focus less on money and more on what you like doing, you will definitely achieve success. Before closing the event, we have a small thanking note from our co-organizer, Tanisha Shah.
Good evening. It's been a pleasure being with you all. Before we close the event, we would like to thank each one of you for joining our virtual TEDx premiere today. Hope this event has brought a ray of hope, not just personally but also professionally. We hope you had a wonderful event with us. First, I would like to thank TED for having faith in us and our speakers for their valuable time and talk. A big thank you to our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Anu Singh Ladher, for providing us the platform, our Registrar, Dr. Nitin Malik, our Dean, Dr. Kartik Dave, and our curators, Dr. Richa Ravasti and Dr. Anshu Gupta, for the immense support. And last but not the least, our student core team, our IT team and finance team for their continuous efforts. We will meet again in other timeline very soon. Till then, take care, be safe.